I grew up about a mile south of here, and that was my mom and dad's farm. And I went to school at the local school here, which was the Sioux Valley schools, and I graduated in 1972. And then I went on to Mankato University, and I majored in music. And while I was at Mankato, I got a teaching degree and K through 12, and my emphasis was voice. And so graduated in 1976 and started looking for my first job, and had quite a few different interviews, and I ended up getting a job at Lake Benton, Minnesota, and there I taught K through 12 vocal music. Regretfully, while my first job, I enjoyed teaching immensely. We found ourselves in a labor strike. And so that was a learning experience, and it also was an experience that affected me quite drastically. And so after leaving that position, an opportunity came to buy this farm. And the year was the fall of 1978. And so that's how I ended up here and started farming. And so the first 10 years I worked with my dad, and we had hogs and cattle, and then about 10 years later I met my wife Rhonda, and she was a local extension agent, and we were married November 7th, 1987. And so she married a farmer, and she was from Omaha, Nebraska. We were diverse type of individuals. She graduated from a class of 550. I graduated from a class of 14 in high school. So she was, I was a music teacher background. She was an ag teacher background. She was one of the first ag teachers in the state of Nebraska. And so then we started having children, and we have 3 boys. Matthew, my oldest, Nathan, and Aaron. And when we built our house in 1988, and we went through the financial turbulence of the 80s when I was single. Our financial troubles came in the 90s. Let's see how I want to say this. In 1996, I believe, we filed bankruptcy. We had built a hog setup, thinking that a farm that had 120 sows, and we would farrow and produce about 2,500 head of hogs, that would be large enough to support my family. However, it didn't work out that way, and so I went back to teaching in 1997, and I taught 7 years thereafter at Butterfield-Odin School, K through 12 vocal music. My wife worked off the farm as well, but we kept farming. We changed the operation many times. Then when my middle son was about 8 years old, we started to do farmers market, and he was all excited about that. He learned how to count change, and he was, you know, it was a good experience for us as a family. And so now, as time went on, we continued to do the farmers market. We added perennials. We sell flowers and annuals in the spring, and it's called Brandt Gardens and Greenhouse. And however, I'm still here. My children have gone on. 2 are still in college. My wife works 120 miles away from home. She's the principal for the Minnesota Valley Area Learning Center. And so we do what we have to do to stay on the farm. And it's been a trying 30-some years, but it's been also good for my family. My children are highly work ethics type of individuals, and they will succeed very, very well as they go on in their careers. My oldest is in landscaping, and that's why I'm doing perennials. I'm hoping I can find a niche market, or trying to figure it out so that my family can stay on the farm, and we keep the land in the family. And I think that's an issue that many families will be facing because of consolidation that has gone in agriculture the last 30 years. And so that sort of brings me up to where we are today.
So can you give me a picture of sort of how your operation is put together right now? I mean, you got the perennials and the farm and garden stuff. Is there also a side of it that's more kind of conventional farming, or how do you put the pieces together now?
Right. I'm very diverse. We have a flock of ewes, and we lamb in the spring, and so we have about 40 ewes that we own. I also have a hog barn that I custom feed approximately 1,200 pigs, from feeder weight to market weight finishing, for an owner off the farm. I'm a caretaker for the hogs. I also farm 80 acres of land that I own. So I have 20 acres of corn, 20 acres of oats, and 37 acres of beans. I do rent some of my land out to another farmer. I also custom farm for my sister Judy, 80 acres, and she farms corn and soybeans. And then we have gotten involved into production of vegetables, and so this year we have approximately 5 acres of vegetables under production now, and so we grow a wide variety of vegetables, from lettuce to winter squash and everything in between, tomatoes, peppers. And today we are picking sugar snap peas and getting them ready for the market. I also do annual flowers and perennials, and I have approximately 75 different types of perennials that I sell to customers and work with landscapers. So I try to make a dollar wherever I can make a dollar.
5 acres of vegetables. Are you managing? What kind of help do you have for that?
Well, it's basically me, myself, and I. We do the best we can, and I try to use some of the technology of planting in plastic, trying to keep weeds under control, but it's like anything else, you do the best you can, and one of the biggest problems I have is finding help, and then finding help that's willing to work. And so it's like anything, it's a balancing act for economics, making sure that you can cover everything.
Now, in your story, there was a period of experimentation mentioned as you came to find a formula that worked for you. I wonder if you could tell us a little more about what you tried and what you learned about how to make a farm work in the course of your experiments, after the bankruptcy, when you came back into this.
Well, basically, you try different things, and you try to do everything, everything on a cash basis. One of the things I found that was very interesting is when you plant into black plastic, the absorption of the sun, and you plant the seeds in that black plastic, they just explode out of the ground. And And so if you have a trial between planting directly in the black soil and then planting in black plastic, you will increase the growth of that plant. Probably within the first month, you'll exceed it by at least 2 more weeks. And so if you're planting cucumbers in black ground compared to plastic, you will get them 2 weeks sooner to the market. And so that was very interesting. The other thing was planting in high tunnels or in the greenhouse. The warmth, when it's 0 out, say, and the sun is shining, it'll be 60, 70 degrees in that greenhouse, and you won't use no propane to heat it or anything extra to heat it. And so you find ways to meet that market a little bit sooner. And so that's what I've incorporated now with the high tunnel, is planting it directly in the ground, and so then you get tomatoes to the market approximately 30 to 45 days early. And so, but it's like anything else. I don't have a lot of extra money to pay for that help. That's my next step. And so I'm also looking at working with other farmers through a co-op or an organization out of Fairmont called Rural Advantage, where we're sitting down and trying to, not necessarily we will continue the farmers market, but then also when you have broccoli, and it'll all get ready in the field pretty well at the same time. And so you only have X amount of dollars fresh market. And so then you have to come up with something to do with that extra. And so that's where I'm looking at working with individuals and freezing it or however, and then working with schools. And, you know, I do think that we're going full cycle. You know, 40, 50 years ago, you know, there was markets all over locally. You know, there's someone selling eggs, processing eggs locally, which we've all lost now in the last 30 years because of consolidation, to where, you know, there's just a handful of processors. And so I think we have to turn full circle again and try to work with the consumer directly. And we, you know, the integration has taken over in agriculture, and so now I think we also have to become part of that integration as well. And so if we can work and sell directly to the consumer, then maybe there's a hope for a lot of the local communities that are struggling.
So are you marketing exclusively to consumers? I mean, farmers market, that kind of thing, or is there, so you don't have a big semi come in?
Absolutely not, because no, I don't. I would like to, but I'm sort of squeezed out of the market. You know, if I don't have a supply of 1,000,000 heads of broccoli, you know, they don't want somebody that only has 100 or 1,000, or, you know what I'm saying. Big has taken over, and it's very hard to be included in the negotiations and finding a contract to stay in business.
Are you able to market it all to local grocery stores?
Well, I do that with my flowers, somewhat with the local, and so the next step is trying to do with the vegetables with local schools. But the problem there is, you know, schools aren't in session when farmers have majority of the fruits and vegetables ready. And so I do think that we have to do a little bit of processing, be it freezing or drying. And so you know, I'm working with individuals now, and we're trying to figure it out, but we're just not quite there yet.
So maybe, I mean, is the idea to bring, to get a bunch of truck farmers together and fund a processing plant, a freezing plant, a canning plant, something like that?
Well, I think that's a step in the right direction, but then also society has to believe that this is good business. The food is good, good quality, and it will be. It just, but then you have to have a buyer. It's like anything else. If you have a product and nobody wants to buy it, that's not good either. And so I think society is listening, and are willing to buy maybe from a local producer rather than some large name brand. But it takes time, and I've been doing this now close to 12, 13 years, and you know, when I had this vision in my head way back when, people thought I was nuts. They still think I'm probably a little bit off the beaten path, but I do think that I do think that I'm on the right road. However, there's a lot of namesayers out there, and it's like anything else. You do the best you can and continue the fight. Yeah.
You mentioned along the way that you're doing stuff on a cash basis.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm looking at the machine behind you and trying to guess what, 70,000?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's like anything else. You try to do everything in cash, but you still have to have credit. You still have to have operating line, and which we do have. And but it's like anything else. The costs are just so great, and one of my biggest in cost, I think that most families would agree with, would be the insurances, from your car to your health to life to disability to whatever the insurances you may need are so great, and I know that's one of the biggest things we have to budget is for all those insurances, and it's sort of scary. And yeah, and I just do not know where our young farmers are going to come from, and that's why another concern is I would like to pass my farm on to my children. It's a big struggle, you know. When if I knew when I bought that first piece of land, I'm still struggling with that first commitment, and it takes a lot of money. You know?
Yeah. Well, do you find that having to work kind of closer to a cash basis maybe than other farmers, and not have? I mean, has that been a real limitation for you?
Oh yes. Yeah. It has been, because of the fact that, you know, I would like to go to the next step, and I think people would buy my frozen products that I could do, but it's just like anything else. You always have to have a buyer, and that's sort of scary when you're up against the big supermarkets of the world, and why would you want to buy from Bill Brandt when you can just drive down the road and buy it at Walmart or Hy-Vee or any of the name brand area supermarkets? And it's like anything else. I think the trust issue, knowing where your food comes from, is very important to people, and I think it will continue to be important to people, and so that's my hope.
Getting back to the passing it on to your children idea, have you been in discussion? I mean, are the children there to receive it? Are they going to be very surprised when they open a will and find that they own a farm?
Well,
what's that going to be like?
Well, that's a good question. My oldest son lives in Chicago and is married, and he likes to do landscaping. He does landscaping on the side. He's operational manager for Lifetime Fitness, which is, you know, a large name exercise corporation. And so, but I don't, you know, the opportunity comes, he would like to start a landscaping business. So that's why I continue to do perennials and stuff, because it would be an asset to have some of your own plants. My middle son goes to River Falls, University of River Falls, and majoring in agronomy and animal science. Graduates in December this year, and has shown an interest of maybe coming back, but how we're going to do it, you know, he's going to have off-farm job. He breeds cows now, and so that, you know, we've increased our ewe flock a little bit this summer, and so it'll be a slow process, but as far as my concern is, all three boys are going to share in the equity of our estate. It's going to be equal. Three boys, you know, shared, you know, after both my wife and I die. And so it isn't completely set in stone how we're going to do it, but probably put the land in a trust. I'm not sure. But that's why we will go to a lawyer and get some advice, seek some advice. But and then there's Aaron. He's the youngest. He goes to Valparaiso University in Valparaiso, Indiana. And he's going into business and marketing and accounting. So if we do ever get a venture off the ground to where we are selling frozen product from our farm directly, be it animals or whatever the case may be, you know, I'm looking to the future that we will have consumers coming directly to the farm and buying their food from individual farmers.
It sounds like you've put your operation together in a way that is as likely as you can make it to lure the kids back.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I would like to have, you know, at least one of my children come back because, you know, it's a legacy.
Yeah.
You know, you work hard, and, you know, it's like anything else. You want to pass it on to your children, and hopefully it'll continue and stay in the family. And I think I'm just like many other farmers out there. What are we going to do? Because, you know, as you say, that combine behind me, if you bought something new like that today, it probably cost $500,000, or at least $250,000, and so brand new. And so you have to have a lot of acres to pay for something like that, because the margins in agriculture are so small. And so I will continue to look for answers, but you know, it's a head shaker.
Right. Right. And the one piece of the story that kind of, for me, doesn't fit with the rest is the sheep. How'd the sheep come into it?
The sheep came into it because of my middle son. He showed Suffolk sheep when he was in high school, FFA and 4-H, and so that was, you know, that was one of the things we encourage our children, and that can be expensive. And if you know anything about purebred sheep or any purebred animals, it's a high-priced hobby, and I try to teach my son the practicality of that, and so I try to keep him, you know, very, very, and he realizes that it's a rich man's game. And so so now he's into crossbreeding and looking at the actual production of your sheep, and he does that through his white-faced moms, ewes, and then he crosses them with a black-faced Hamp or Suffolk, and then you have a larger animal. But he added some Friesian sheep to our herd, and that's the milking ability of the mothers. So he's you know, he's using his college education the way it probably should be used, and I'm hoping that his first job is going to be on embryos you know, the technology is you know, where you transplant embryos into be it cows or be it sheep, and you continue that trait faster. So it's like anything else. You know, you use the technology that you feel is good. Not all technology I feel is good, but it's like anything else. You pick and choose, and coming back to, you do the best you can each day that you are on this earth, you know, type situation. So that's how we got into sheep. Was my kid's hobby.
So now you're into custom sheep design.
Not custom
designer sheep.
Yeah, designer sheep. Well, that's basically what we've got. The animal agriculture has gone through. It's gone through in the swine. It's going through in the cattle, and you know, it's gone through in our crops. And that's one of the concerns I have, is through the buying of my seeds for vegetables, I've found that the big corporate people have swallowed up a lot of these small mom and pop seed varieties, and so there's concern. You know, I'm not sure how this is all going to play out, but it's interesting how fast-paced our society has come, and I'm just curious how it's all going to play out.
I'm just struck by how intelligent this whole enterprise is. Do you feel yourself being stretched by it? I mean, the numbers of things you have to learn to stay in this game?
Oh, very much so. Yeah, but it's exciting, you know. I'm always thinking, you know, doing different things. Yeah, but then also I have, you know, my music is sort of an escape from the reality of the pressures of agriculture. You know what I'm saying? And so.
Oh. Yeah, well, tell us a little bit about how music has continued to be part of your life as you've gone through this agricultural.
Oh, well, it's sort of this
career.
The stabilizing stress relief, because I have a piano in the house. I sing all the time. That's my escape from the pressures of life. I recently did what do they call that, when you before you die you do your bucket list. Yeah, one of my bucket list things was to do a CD of me performing, and I did that this last winter with the help of my cousin Deb. And so now we're doing a fundraiser for our church. We want to buy a digital piano for our church to update the electronic organ that we have, and so that's why I sort of did that, and I'm very pleased with how that turned out. And music has been probably the stabilizing thing in my life that has kept me grounded and focused, and how I want to say. Yeah, grounded and focused from not going off the deep end, because of the pressures that are constantly coming from all areas when you have a business that can be financially stressed.
Have there been times when you've been close to the edge? Close to going off the deep end?
Well, yeah. Well, I don't know if you question yourself, but then you always you know, the faith comes in. You know, I said, oh, why am I doing this, Lord? And then all of a sudden, you know, if you have a problem, and you know, it's been something that's been, you broke down. Something's not working out correctly, and so, what am I doing wrong, Lord, today? And then all of a sudden, He fixes it. You know, I get this idea. Oh, maybe it's this. And so you do that, and it runs. And so you just put faith in God and faith in family, or whatever the case may be, and you get through. And it may not be perfect, but you muddle through, because life is a challenge. I think everybody will agree to that.
It seems important, an important part of your story, that you've got these other both you and your wife have these other possible careers. I mean,
yes.
That you have something to fall back on,
Right.
Besides the farm, or for the time when the farm is maybe in difficulty. You have some way of generating income.
Yeah, that comes from my mother. My mom, grew up on the farm all his life, and my dad did too, and so they're very well of the financial struggles that every farmer has. And it happens all the time, and it'll continue to be there until the end of time. And so my mom said, I come from a family of 4, and she said, each of you kids are going to have a college education. And so each one of us did graduate from Mankato, and each one of us had a teaching degree. And so it was one of those things that we always fell back on. And I think that's so important for our children, that every one of our children are going to have some type of a degree to fall on, because if you have a business, you never know when that's going to fail. And it's just, today, we could rely on jobs. Now we can't even rely on jobs because of the fact that you may have a job one day and the next day you don't. And so jobs are becoming like a business, and so very unsure. And so I think society is really trying to find itself, and it's going to be interesting as we struggle together in the years to come.
So I remember on your website a bunch of the reason you gave for getting into this whole perennials business and marketing was your kids, and was educating the kids. I mean, if you just in your experience of how it is to raise kids on a farm.
Well, I think we're losing that because of the fact that there's fewer and fewer farms, and I think it's important to have that ability to grow your own food, because I'm scared that is becoming a lost art. And home gardens and community gardens are coming back, but the idea of having a farm, no matter what size, which you can call home, you can always come back and you can feed yourself and take care of yourself. And I think we're losing that because the number of people owning land is fewer and fewer, and I think it's important to have a base, to have some type of land, because it's like anything else. You go out there and struggle and toil and plant it and till, and to try to make a dollar from the land is a sobering thing to do. And I think it's important that my children have had that experience, and I don't know if they're going to come back totally, but having that experience is still important, because how to clean a chicken is important. Or, it's like anything else. How to plant a cucumber and get something to feed, something to eat. And I hope the grocery stores are always going to be there for society. If you have small farmers or farmers, at least you can go to the farm and ask for an exchange of labor for food, or whatever the case may be when things get tough. And I hope society will never have to go hungry. But That's why I hope I keep the land so that my family won't have to go hungry. And so it's a challenge, and I think it's food for thought.
We mentioned a lot of trends that could be discouraging if you were inclined to be discouraged. A lot of things are happening in the farm world that you don't like.
Right.
What do you find as grounds for optimism?
Well, I have hope that society is listening to and has, finding out what the actual story is, because I've found out through my short life that a person has to investigate and then ask questions and seek the truth, because not everything you hear or everything that another person says is always fact or always true. And I think as society we've gone through that, through the financial crisis of 2008. We put our trust in people taking care of our future with our money, hard-earned money, and all of a sudden we found ourselves, the 10,000 that we put in on the stock exchange was no longer there, and there was only 2,000 there. And so I do think that as individuals, many of us have found that we have to seek the truth and investigate and make sure that each and every one of us are doing the jobs that we were supposed to be doing, and be it from the farmer to the banker to the teacher to whoever you work with. Making sure that each individual that you work with are doing their jobs the way they should be doing it. And a lot of times I found that it doesn't necessarily mean that they were, and that's some of the reasons why I found myself caught up in different financial messes, because of the fact that, they weren't doing this and they weren't doing that, and so that meant this, and then I had repercussions, and then it always comes back to the person who has signed the dotted line or whatever the case may be. Somebody always has to pay the piper, and so as an individual, we have to investigate, and then you always have these red flags that 2 + 2 is 4, but then all of a sudden, if somebody's trying to tell you it's 5 or it's 3.5, no, 2 + 2 is 4, and so you investigate to make sure that when certain things should be happening, that's for sure that you're treated fairly. And
well, the thing that I presume you know most about is local food.
yeah,
That's what you put your life into. And in some very extended sense, at the back of me are a million people. Many of them are asleep, but they're there.
yeah.
What do you want to tell them about local food?
Well, local foods is a local economy. We're all working together on this earth to support each other, and most of us aren't going to be rich when we die. We can't take it with us anyway, and so I think it's important that we work together in a way that is good for society, the common good. And if I can grow food, and then an individual that has the expertise in processing, be it freezing or canning or whatever the case may be, to where I can make a little money to stay on the land, and they can make a little money to stay in their house and business. Why do we have to give that up to some large group of people that live some far, far away, and they have no vested interest in our communities? Why can't we have just a small bite of success? I think it's important that we have fairness in how we treat each other. And local foods, I think, is a start, because we're going full circle. You may have watched Little House on the Prairie, where they brought the little eggs into the grocery store and then they sold them. A lot of people are going to think I'm way off my rocker, but we are trying to create jobs out here. And if we can't make $1 in our labor, there's no hope for society as a whole if we're going to try to have one person who owns, or a handful of people who owns, all the production hogs, or whatever the case, whatever commodity you're talking about. If we can't share in the wealth, there's going to be heck to pay, because human beings have always felt they had to be treated fairly, and when they didn't felt they were being treated fairly, people acted out. And so I'm hoping that we can all get along. There should be a place for all, the small to the big. But I do think that we've shipped so many farmers out of my area. You know, the place that was a half mile down the road, they just buried it last spring. They bought it of another farmer, and so acreages are being buried, and so the acreages are getting larger. But in a civilized, common good, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to try to herd everybody into a few cities or whatever the case may be. You know, there has to be a balanced equation. And do I know what that balanced equation is? Of course I don't. But I have always felt, in all the problems that I've dealt with in my life, in the 30-some years I've been here, the minute I can't communicate with the people that are involved, nothing gets done. And that's where we find ourselves in a lot of situations today, be it politics or wherever. If I have a problem with you as an interviewer, and we can't sit down and talk about it, we're not going to solve nothing. And we can't get this lawyer in and that lawyer in, and then, you know, blah, 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 blah. That's too, I don't have enough money. You never solve problems that way. So we have to be able to sit down and communicate. And it drives me sort of up the wall a lot of times when you know, they make all these decisions and we just don't even know what they are until after the laws are passed, and then they all sit down. Oh, this is going to affect you terribly, and you know, I don't understand all that. But it's an interesting point in which we find ourselves as a society. And I'm hoping that local foods is the start of reverting it back to where you can come to me and buy vegetables or whatever. And if you have, oh, I would like this. And they say, well, I think I'd probably do that for you, you know, for X amount of dollars. And you're happy and I'm happy and everybody's happy. We should be able to get along. Yeah, there's going to be problems. If we don't get rain, I can't produce some things. So God is in control.
I'm thinking about your son in Chicago, and I want to ask, I mean, Chicago's a big, flashy, exciting city. I mean, you could eat food from a different part of the world every night for an awfully long time in Chicago.
Right.
What is there, do you think, is there enough in rural Minnesota to pull talented kids back and to keep them here?
At this point in time, no. No, because we do not have the income. We do not, you know, it's just like me trying to hire somebody to help me. When I take my vegetables down, you know, I was supposed to go to Worthington today, to the farmer's market. And I've decided that I can't go because I don't generate enough income to cover my fuel. And so we're not there ready yet as a society because we're not hungry probably. Mm-hmm. But, you know, that's why I can't go today, because it's like anything else, and it's economics. You know, I get all this stuff ready, and then if I don't sell enough, you know, it's not profitable. And I, you know, there's only market, I can charge so much, you know, that the consumer won't buy it. You know what I'm saying? So there's a balance there. And so, do I know what the answer is? I don't, but what's happening, I just feel like we're just running around trying to catch our tail, because you have to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and more volume for less and less and less to get more and more. You know, it just it's a vicious cycle. But you know, I'm hoping that society will think that there is merit in trying to keep a local economy going, because I don't know, like corn and beans, we're exporting one bushel of beans out of every 4 that we produce in this country, and the majority of it goes to China. I hope that market stays, but what happens if it doesn't? You know, I have yet to see something that's for sure, because all of a sudden, if you think it's for sure, the next day it's not for sure. And so, yeah, I think I will continue to muddle through, but I will grow good food for people who wish to consume it and purchase it.
I'm curious about, you know, your thoughts about the next step. I mean, this place has evolved lots of ways. The sheep got added on, the perennials got added on. The engine for a lot of those changes was the kids and their interests and their needs.
Right.
I'm wondering what you're thinking about now as you develop the operation, move to the next stage, and look at the economics. What's your current thinking?
My current thinking is that I'm going to have some expert advice, be it an intern or something, on production, on the processing of food. I can grow it. Like my middle son, you know, he took classes in animal processing, you know, and so, but I feel it's more important in the plant, in the vegetables, processing, if I could find a person that has a field of expertise in freezing or canning or whatever the case may be, I can grow broccoli, and I can grow cauliflower, and I can grow tomatoes and peppers and lots of stuff. And if society wants processed, or not processed, but something that can be, say dried, if we dry it, and then we put the combination of this and this and this and this, and then all the consumer would have to do is put a half a cup of water or a cup of water into that dried ingredient that we package, and then it would be this tremendous soup or something, you know. I think that's the hope for me, for little farmers to continue to grow. Mm-hmm. And so, because then, you know, we'd be somewhat like branding, you know, we could name it and brand it or whatever the case may be. We'd be just like the big integrators that had happened in the last 30 years. Mm-hmm. in animal agriculture and as well as so then maybe it would give individual farmers or groups of farmers a chance to grow, because that's the next step. You know, there's only so much I can sell at farmers market. Mm-hmm. and so that's what I'm really going to be spending my time on in the next, till I retire. Nice. And then I'm going to give up the ship and and pass it on to my children, hopefully they'll solve the problem, or you know, a person that comes from, you know, to me. You know, I'm looking for advice.
Mm-hmm. Well, so what you really need is small scale canning, drying, preserving technology, yes, appropriate to your operation, appropriate to the stuff you do, and the possibility of marketing that in a sort of specialty niche.
That's correct.
As superior quality, perhaps a little higher priced. You can't compete with factories that are acres big. Right. But perhaps a little higher priced. But you really want the situation of Denmark. You want, I mean, Denmark, when it was faced with big agriculture, it produced, you know, it went into specialty stuff, specialty cheeses, specialty. You want that, you want to redo that kind of story.
Right.
And you're looking for the technology and you're looking for the expertise. Mm-hmm. And so, have you found stuff on the internet that, I mean, some people, you know, is this the sort of thing that you can like go out in the shop and hammer something together?
Well, I do think that we are moving in that direction. Like I mentioned before, there's a nonprofit in Fairmont called Rural Advantage, and they have put together a group of people from south central Minnesota, 5 counties, and I think there's like 15 or so of us who are interested in local foods, and it's going to be a food policy. We're going to develop food policy for our 5 counties. And what's sort of exciting about this project is that we're the first rural area in the country that is working together to come up with a policy on food. There is no, you know, San Francisco, I think New York City, some of the larger states have food policy, but as in government, there is not one single department that deals with food. There's like 4 or 5 that sort of cross over, you know, and I do think that we as a society progresses, I think we have to sort of sit down and talk about this. How do we want food to be distributed? How do we want food to be produced? How we want, you know, we talk about everything, you know, from education, you know, we talk about this health and everything else. I think it's time we talk about food in the light of other issues. And so I think maybe this is a step in the right direction. because I know I've met a couple other farmers that are just like me, grow X amount for the farmer's market. They're to the next, they want to go to the next step, and the next step would be to freeze it or dry it. And so we're talking about now maybe buying it's called a food blaster, where you quick freeze it, and then and we'll share the cost or whatever. So we're to that point now to where we're starting to communicate with others, and up to this point, I've always been out here by myself, and the farmer that may have had the same ideas was over there by themselves, and we've been all sort of isolated, and now we're starting to slowly finding, oh, there are other people in the world that think like me, and so that may be a good thing. And so now we can sit down and work together. So I'm excited with that project, and so in a year from now we'll have met for 1 year, and then we're going to come up with some type of a statement, and so I'm looking forward to that.
Well, this is kind of the production end of the stuff, getting a product that handles the surplus issue,
right?
Which is huge. I mean,
right.
You never have the amount that people want when they want it.
That's right.
At least you can't win with fresh stuff.
Right.
But the other side of it is marketing. The other side of it is finding the customer. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, where do your customers come from now, and where are you looking to market?
Yeah, well, there's a national website called Local Dirt, and it's located out of Madison, Wisconsin, and that was funded through a grant. And I'm not sure exactly what that is, what grant was. But the gist of that website is it deals with local foods, and you can go on there and put in your zip code, and it will then give you a list of producers that grow vegetables or fruits or whatever within X amount of miles of that zip code. And so we have a group of farmers that I'm working with called the Little Sioux Growers. We are on that Local Dirt, and so you can today go to Local Dirt and then order it from us. And then we have a drop point in Spirit Lake and Spencer.